And I'd like to thank the Minister for coming into the House. And what is a very important issue? With the decline in CAP funding, the whole issue of price has to take centre stage. And I have been saying for 3 years to the Minister that it is absolutely vital now that he realises that the price issue cannot be just left simply to market forces. And the reality is that there has been a significant decline in the price for milk. The price of milk at the moment is 22% lower than it was in the same month in 2014. And the decrease we've had here is actually slightly bigger than the average across the EU, which is 18%. Now, to put this in monetary terms, for an average farmer, every cent cut from the farmgate milk price is costing about somewhere between 3,000 and 6,000 euro per farmer per year, according to the ICMSA. And what that would mean is that for an average dairy farmer, the loss is about 30,000. And that is a huge amount of money. And when you take the production cost at 28 cents per litre, you could see that we're very much coming to the point that there'll actually be no profit out of the production of a litre of milk. Now, for those who are a long time in farming with low gearing ratios, they can probably ride it out. Certainly for people who have got into very heavy investments, this is a major challenge. But the major worry is we see the uncertainty of the world. We see the sudden Russian ban because of things that couldn't be foreseen 3 or 4 years ago. And what the Minister has allowed happen is that the intervention price in the EU is 20 cents a litre. And what we need now is a safety net at 28 cents a litre. In other words, that intervention would be 28 cents a litre. A 20 cent a litre intervention price is nonsensical, because the reality is that's the world market price anyway. So you could always sell your product if it fell that low. Now, in relation to sheep prices, we've seen a massive decline in sheep prices. And I know that the Minister will probably give the same answer she was given yesterday to give in the Shannon and tell me about BTAB schemes and everything else. We could have a big debate about EU schemes, but tonight's not tonight, so you can skip that part of the speech. The issue here is price. In other words, farmers want to get their price in the market. And particularly, what is the Minister going to do on 2 issues? One, to make sure that there are constant live exports, i.e. competition in the market, because otherwise we're in this bottleneck situation, particularly because we don't have a food ombudsman here like they have in Britain, and we're in this bottleneck situation where a very small number of processors control the market. So I have 2 questions, Minister. Number one, can you ensure that we get the full capacity of live exports, that the markets are got for live export and that live exports are facilitated in every way? And the second thing is, I am told that the factories, if you send in a lamb and the lamb killed out at 25 kg, that they're only paying you for 21.5 kg. And the situation is that I do not believe that the factories are throwing the 3.5 kgs of meat in the skip. So my view is, if you lamb killed out at 25 kg, they should pay you for 25 kg. And again, through the beef forums or the sheep forums, of all these forums the Minister is so keen on, can he not insist that if you send in animals, you get paid in the full weight? Because this just seems to be another way for the factories in a monopoly situation of depressing the price artificially. So I have very specific issues I need addressed. As I said, I'd be really grateful, Minister, if you could address the issues I raised, the issue of the intervention price, and the issue of the live exports and what's been done about live exports, and the issue about getting paid for your full weight.
Minister, you have 4 minutes for a reply. Thank you, Corla. And yes, we did answer a question on this in the House, but I think it's important that it's reiterated what we said in the Seanad last night, and the Deputy will appreciate I am taking this issue on behalf of Minister Coveney, who is in Galway today for bilateral meetings with the EU Fisheries Commissioner Vila. The Deputy has raised questions on market developments, two of the most important elements of the agri-food sector, sheep and dairy. I will deal with the sheep sector first. Primary output from the sheep industry is currently worth about 230 million, a value which has grown significantly in recent years. Over two-thirds of output is exported. Exports in 2014 totalled almost 48,000 tonnes, with a value of 218 million. The sheep sector in Ireland is heavily dependent on the export market, as the domestic consumption is only about 30% of overall production. The core markets remain France and the UK, with the French market usually representing double that of the UK. This reflects the strong demand and reputation in France for Irish lamb, and also the consumer preference in the UK for the British product. I am also aware that sheep farmers are vulnerable to price fluctuations. While price is something that is subject to the normal dynamics of the marketplace, the Government has provided a range of financial and structural supports to the sector that can help to make the sector more resilient and position it to avail of development opportunities. On the issue of sheep prices, my department monitors average sheep prices and sheep slaughtering figures on a weekly basis, as the two are clearly interlinked. While the recent movement on prices has been disappointing, it is not out of line with the trend experienced in other countries, and there are some signs of recovery this week. I am satisfied that it does not point to a structural difficulty within the overall sheep meat sector, but rather reflects the fluctuations that can happen at this time of the year. The latest available figures show that after a strong first quarter in 2015, where the average Irish price was approximately 11% up on the same period in 2014, prices have fallen back. This change in price in recent weeks is likely due to a combination of various factors. Supplies are in full flow at present due to seasonal factors. At the same time, there are poor market conditions, and this is believed to be driving down average prices as measured on a weekly basis. While this recent dip in prices is disappointing, it remains the case that at the end of June, the average year-to-date price was running at approximately 4% ahead of the same period last year. Just this week, I understand that prices have started to rise sharply again, and that demand for sheep and lamb by factories is very strong. In recognising the vulnerability of sheep farmers, the Minister has introduced a number of measures to help drive on-farm viability. These measures include Sheep Technology Adoption Programme, STAP, which was introduced in 2013 and which has played a major role encouraging technology adoption on farms, while also requiring participants to undertake a number of farm tasks. These farm tasks make use of the best technologies available to sheep farmers in Ireland, while also encouraging improved breeding. STAP is currently in its third and final year. On average, around 4,000 farmers have participated in the scheme each year, and a total funding of more than 6.5 million was spent in 2013 and 2014. Various other schemes in RDP are also of direct relevance to the sheep sector. For example, the GLOS scheme will benefit sheep farmers and will continue to be significant beneficiaries from the areas of natural constraint. A series of capital investment schemes are being introduced under TAMS 2. It must also be remembered that the sheep grassland scheme, which invested over 65 million on Irish farms during its lifetime, has now been included in the direct payment of each sheep farmer under the revised CAP arrangements. The Foodwise 2025 report launched last week also included a number of recommendations in relation to the sheep sector, and the Minister will put in place a robust implementation process to monitor progress on implementation. Okay.
Minister, you can do anything with figures, and unfortunately your colleague is a genius with this. What you say is that the change in price in recent weeks is likely due to a combination of various factors. Supplies are in full flow at present due to seasonal factors. But of course, as you know, Minister, if there's an awful lot of sheep coming to the market at a low price, and the price is very high in the spring when there are very few sheep coming out, that means that it's not much good to the farmer at the high price because the number of sheep coming out. So if you actually got the average price paid for sheep, you'd find that has been a very bad year for lowland sheep to date. And what I was wondering in particular is what has been done to stimulate live exports to keep competition on the factories. Because again in your reply you say, well, market is something that is subject to normal dynamics of the marketplace. But of course a lot of farmers will tell you, because of what they call the hourglass effect of farming, i.e. a lot of producers, a lot of consumers and very few processors and multiples involved, that there isn't a normal dynamic in the middle and that the processor has overweening power, as has the multiples. And it's very interesting that your colleague, or your erstwhile colleague, now Commissioner Hogan, shares my concern about the price issue and what you're going to do to curb the power of the very small number of major multiples. Because as you say, all the lamb goes on the continental market. There's virtually nothing exported outside the EU at the moment. And I'd be interested in your response to this. I have to ask you a second question. Would you accept, Minister, that when you amalgamate the sheep grassland scheme, particularly for hill sheep farmers, most of them were under €150 per hectare, and that by 2019, all that money will be eroded because they'll be at the 150, but they would have been at 150 anyway, and that the way he handled the grassland scheme is literally of no benefit to most hill farmers in the longer term, and that it was a disastrous decision. And I was wondering what your view on that is. Minister, very briefly, on the milk, there seems to be great confidence here that the market's going to rise, but it mightn't. I was listening to a report in China yesterday where we're told that they might have an absolute classic bubble of the type of bubble that the US had in the 20s, and that it's ordinary citizens who invested in the stocks and shares. If that happens, purchasing power is going to go down. What contingency is in place if there's a collapse in milk prices? Because the best on offer at the moment is a 20-cent, 8 cents below production cost intervention. And what is the Minister going to do to get the intervention price up to 28 cents a litre?
Thank you, Deputy Minister. You have 2 minutes for a concluding statement.
Thank you, Kencora. And I suppose the price situation in Ireland is broadly replicated in other EU member states, reflecting the global nature of the problem. Using cross-country comparable data from the EU Milk Market Observatory, the most recently available complete data shows that the milk price in Ireland is approximately, as the Deputy referred to, 22% below the same month in 2014, slightly above the 19% decrease on average across the EU. I should say that the Minister's focus now is ensuring that the correct balance of policies and supports are in place so that the Irish dairy sector can overcome the effects of volatility over the next while. Minister Coveney will continue to push for deployment and extension of EU market supports, such as aids to private storage and intervention where appropriate. There are also a number of other measures introduced by the Minister and the Government to assist Irish dairy farmers, including introduction of a number of agri-taxation measures in last year's budget, including extending the income averaging to 5 years, and this will be of great assistance to dairy farmers wishing to manage volatility. The introduction of a scheme to facilitate the repayment of the super levy bill by farmers over 3 years, which I expect to be heavily subscribed. Engagement with Irish banks to ensure that access to credit for our dairy sector is available, competitive and also responsiveness to market volatility. I believe that a combination of these measures, allied to the investment and expertise of our dairy farmers and processors, means that the Irish dairy sector remains well placed to realise its potential in the years to come and to meet the challenges of market volatility also along the way. Both the dairy and sheep sectors are and will continue to be integral elements of our agri-food sector, and I and my department are fully committed to their development. Thank you.